In 1939, the Soviet Union launched a massive attack on Finland, marking the beginning of the Winter War. Expected a fast victory, like the Blitzkrieg applied by Germany many months ago, the Red Army plunged into the frozen tundras of Finland. However, the actual outcome of the conflict didn't go as planned. The Finnish army managed to resist Soviet attacks, fighting in extremely cold temperatures reaching -43 degrees Celsius, -45 degrees Fahrenheit. To survive in these conditions, the Finland army used desperate tactics, including deep defense and guerrilla warfare, taking advantage of their rugged terrain to prolong their resistance. Nonetheless, Finland did suffer significant losses. To bolster their forces, they had to scraping the barrel and employed a policy of conscripting almost every available individual, in consequence leaving some logistical and defense areas short-handed. In response to this situation, a remarkable voluntary movement of women, known as the Lada Svard, stepped up to fill these understaffed roles and provide crucial support to their country during this prolonged and harsh conflict, fighting and dying for their country. This leaves some questions. Who are these women, and where did they come from? In this video, we will delve into this specific organization, highlighting the remarkable contributions of the Lada Svard throughout the Finland history of those who fought behind the front lines. If we're going to discuss the Ladas, it's important to consider the creation of their country, Finland. Finland was part of Sweden since 1809, when it was annexed from the Russian Empire, creating the Great Duchy of Finland. From the beginning, tensions arose as Russia attempted to Russify Finland and diminish its autonomy. We can mention two Russification periods from 1899 to 1905 and 1908 to 1917, where they faced strong resistance from the Finnish population. In 1914, Nicholas II sought complete Russification, but the outbreak of World War I interrupted these efforts. After 3 years of war against the Central Powers, the Russian Empire fell in 1917 due to the February and October revolutions. Nicholas II abdicated, and in the personal union between Russia and Finland lost its legal basis, at least from the perspective of Helsinki. To avoid a possible independence, negotiations began between the Russian Provisional Government and Finnish authorities. During this period, the Finnish parliament introduced the Valtiolaki or Power Act, asserting legislative control, except in foreign policy and military matters. After the St. Petersburg Rebellion, the provisional government rejected this, leading to the dissolution of the Finnish parliament. With its fall to the Bolsheviks during the October Revolution, Finland seized the opportunity, declared independence on December 6, 1917, and officially became an independent nation. In reference to the Declaration of the Rights of the Peoples of Russia, the new declaration stated, "The people of Finland have by this step taken their fate in their own hands, a step both justified and demanded by present conditions. The people of Finland feel deeply that they cannot fulfill their national and international duty without complete sovereignty. The century-old desire for freedom awaits fulfillment now. Finland's people step forward as a free nation among the other nations in the world." After achieving independence, Finland's troubles were far from over. The October Revolution created tensions, as some socialist-leaning Finns were reluctant to separate from Russia due to the new Russian government being socialist. Contrary to expectations, Finland's independence actually exacerbated tensions. The struggle for power and the arming of different factions escalated after severing formal ties with Russia. The moderate Social Democratic Party leadership hesitated to seize power until the social situation became unbearable, influenced by pressure from the more radical Red Guards. The new government tried to appease some socialist demands but couldn't prevent the path toward conflict. Finally, in January 1918, clashes began, leading to war on January 27th. The Red Guards, often called the Reds, took control of Helsinki and declared a revolution. Simultaneously, the White Civil Guards disarmed Russian troops in Ostrobothnia, on Finland's western coast, following the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, marking the start of the Civil War in Finland. The Ladas as we know them were born in this war. The organization's roots can be traced back to the Finnish Civil War, a pivotal point in Finnish history. It grew from long-standing Finnish traditions of informal women's groups that actively supported various community initiatives. These groups played crucial roles in providing public services, including the supply of food to volunteer fire departments and local governments, as Finland prepared for its independence. During the Civil War, women's activist organizations became closely associated with the Finnish Civil Guard, known as the Sotilaskunta. Within this framework, unofficial women's organizations emerged, actively participating in activities such as providing food and clothing, as well as organizing fundraisers for the Sojaluskanta and local communities. As the war evolved, the focus of the Civil Guard shifted towards supporting the Finnish White Army, and the roles of these women expanded further. They began engaging in tasks like manufacturing military equipment, preparing meals for soldiers, and serving as telephone operators. In some regions, female volunteers even took on roles as messengers and guards, with a few expressing a desire to participate in active combat. Notably, in areas controlled by the Reds, women's guard units were established, consisting of approximately 2,000 armed female fighters. On the white side, some women expressed a willingness to contribute beyond medical services and logistics, but any discussions on this matter were abruptly halted by a ban on white, female fighting units issued by General C.G. Mannerheim, the White Commander-in-Chief, who articulated his position in an open letter.
I expect help from Finland's women in meeting the many urgent needs of the army, such as caring for the sick and wounded, manufacturing clothing, caring for the home and comforting those who have lost their loved ones. Fighting the war on the front, meanwhile, I hold to be the exclusive right and duty of the male. This opinion has been awakened in me during the many military expeditions, when I too have had the opportunity to get to know the female battalions, and despite the bravery they have shown, I have become increasingly convinced of their inappropriateness from a military point of view.
Advancing with the war, the Whites, with the advantage of combat experience from the Civil Guards and support from the States Army, Carl Gustav Emil Mannerheim, and the Jaeger movement volunteers from Finland who had trained in the German Empire, had a significant edge in terms of military experience. Additionally, the White forces were better equipped and more organized, with the support of the German Empire's army. This support provided the Whites with a decisive advantage over the Reds, who only had the backing of Soviet Russia, which was embroiled in a civil war against the White Army. This ultimately led to the Reds' irremediable defeat on May 16, just 3 days after losing the capital, Helsinki, and marked the end of war where Finland gained peace as an independent for the time being. By the end of 1919, there were almost 200 women's divisions. With that, the Commander-in-Chief of the Civil Guard, Didrik von Essen, initiated plans to create a nationwide women's organization to centralize the activities of these women's divisions within the Civil Guard. On September 9, 1920, the Lada Svard was formally established as a separate organization. By 1921, it had expanded into a nationwide association, and the new organization was officially registered as the Lada Svard Association.
The mission of the Lada Svard organization is to awaken and strengthen the Sojaluskanta idea and advise the Sojaluskanta organization to protect creed, home and fatherland.
The name, Lada Svard, has its origins in the literary work of the Finland-Swedish writer Johan Ludvig Ruberg, specifically his poetic collection, The Tales of Ensign Stall, which was published in 2 cycles, first in 1848 and then in 1860. Within this collection, one of the poems tells the story of a soldier's wife named Lada Svard. Lada Svard accompanies her husband to the battlefields during the Finnish War, 1808 to 1809, and assumes the role of caring for and encouraging the soldiers. The reason why this name was selected is because it was mentioned by Marshal Mannerheim in a speech he delivered on May 16, 1918. In his speech, he likened the women who performed auxiliary duties during the war to Lada Svard, emphasizing their support and dedication. And here's an excerpt.
Sisters of Mercy and the Lada Svards on the battlefields, and women working tirelessly at home in order to provide equipment and food for the soldiers. Finnish women have worked hard everywhere, in all sectors.
In the period between the 1920s and 1930s, the Lada Svard organization experienced significant growth, expanding to almost 65,000 members in the late 1920s and 242,000 in the late 1930s. Like a little fact, the Lada served as a direct inspiration for a similar organization founded in Stockholm in 1924, which later adopted the name Sveriges Ladakarlar, or the Swedish Lada Corps, and maintained close ties with its Finnish counterpart. The Lada organization was structured into divisions, with the highest authority being the Lada Svard Central Board. Every member belonged to a division, and 2 main categories of Ladas existed: acting Ladas, later Field Latas, and Service Latas. Field Latas were deployed wherever needed, while Service Latas contributed to activities on the home front. The organization was organized into districts and local chapters, with the central board providing overarching leadership. The most famous leader was Fanny Luukkonen, a qualified teacher, who served as the chairperson of the Lada Svard Central Board for 15 years, starting in 1929. She received prestigious awards for her remarkable contributions, including the Order of the Cross of Liberty First Class with Swords from Marshal Mannerheim in June 1940. In addition, she was honored with the Order of the German Eagle with Star from Adolf Hitler on May 19, 1943. Notably, she became the first and only non-German woman to receive these medals. But we must also mention Hildur Riippinen, who also played a crucial role in shaping the ideology of Lada Svard during its early days. She wrote the most important Lada book of the 1920s was The White Book, which contained stories of women's roles in the Civil War. Thanks to her efforts, the Lada Svard organization evolved beyond merely providing material and moral support to the defense. Without her contributions, the spirit of Lada Svard might never have come to life. She served as the editor-in-chief of the Lada Svard magazine, held a position on the organization's central board, and oversaw the South Ostrobothnia district. However, in 1936, she was relieved of her duties due to her association with the Lapuan movement and her extreme right-wing beliefs. If we talk about political stance, while maintaining an apolitical stance, the Lada organization's values aligned with those of conservative Finland and anti-communism, especially until the 1930s. Efforts were made to discourage cooperation with Social Democrats. Any relation with these were frowned upon. If you become a member of Lada Svard applicants who need 2 references of well-known and trustworthy persons. The organization's core values revolved around faith, the importance of the home, and love for our country. The central idea was that people gain significance when they're part of something larger. To nurture the Lada identity, members set goals related to education, moral values, behavior, and appearance. Upon joining the Lada organization, women took the Lada Pledge, a solemn ceremony reflecting nationalist and religious values. The wording of the pledge evolved over the years but conveyed a consistent core message. In 1921, the Lada Pledge was as follows.
I accept pledge with my word of honor that I will honestly and according to my conscience assist the Sojalaskanta in defending creed, home and fatherland. And I promise that I won't give up working in the Lada Svard Association until 1 month has passed from me verifiably informing the local board of my desire to resign from the association.
And 1943
I, X.X, solemnly pledge with my word of honor that I will faithfully and in accordance with my conscience assist the Civil Guard organization in defending religion, home, and fatherland, and fulfill the civil defense duties assigned to me in accordance with the regulations of the Lada Svard organization.
The organization's ideology was based on Christianity, morality, and patriotism, which was also engraved in the organization's golden words, which were an essential part in the crystallization of the Lada spirit. The Ladas was divided in different branches, which were Lada Svard Medical Branch. The Lada Svard Medical Branch was a vital part of the volunteer organization during the Winter War. They managed mobile field hospitals and delivered medical care on both fronts. Training and duties evolved, and they offered essential support, including writing letters for soldiers and providing emotional assistance. Lada Svard Catering Branch. The catering branch of Lada Svard, the organization's largest branch, played a pivotal role in providing food supply during Sojalaskanta maneuvers, public events, and the Winter War. They operated Lada cafes, raising funds for equipment and support. During the Winter War, they staffed field kitchens, producing an incredible 200,000 kilograms of bread daily, and provided food for evacuees, field hospitals, and hospital trains. Their efforts significantly contributed to the war effort, freeing up men for frontline combat and making them a vital part of Finland's defense during the conflict. Lada Svard Supplies Branch. The supplies branch of Lada Svard started during the 1918 Civil War, primarily knitting and sewing for soldiers. As the 1930s approached, they expanded to design uniforms, operate military laundries, care for horses, and support logistics. This branch played a crucial role in supporting Finland's defense efforts. Lada Svard Fundraising Branch. The Lada Svard fundraising branch played a vital role in raising funds and supplies to support the Lada Svard and Sojaluskunta organizations. They organized events, including lotteries and soirees, and sold magazines and badges to generate funds. Over time, their activities expanded to include courses on topics like chemical warfare protection and mobilization maneuvers. In 1932, the branch split into two. The Lada Svard fundraising branch continued fundraising and social activities, while the office and administration branch took on administrative tasks. A new Lada Svard Guards branch, established in 1937, focused on more directly military-related activities. Lada Svard Office and Administration Branch. The Lada Svard Office and Administration Branch, starting in 1932, handled all administrative tasks. This included managing field post offices within the military, operating communications, translating, performing weather observations, and preparing weather reports. Their work relieved many men for frontline combat duties in various defense units. Lada Svard Guards Branch. The Lada Svard Guards Branch, formed in 1937, emerged in response to the desire of young women who had completed military cadet training to play a more active role in Finland's defense. This branch was created to fulfill this aspiration while addressing the military's need for additional personnel in frontline units. The branch included various units such as searchlight batteries, rear area anti-aircraft gun batteries, chemical warfare protection, intelligence, air surveillance, air raid wardens, civil defense, and sea surveillance. They underwent training in areas like anti-chemical warfare and signal operation. Discussions about activities for girls began in 1921 during a local meeting of the Mikkeli Lada Svard unit. However, the idea of forming separate groups for girls aged 10 to 15 within the Lada Svard organization initially received no response. It wasn't until 1929, when Katri Lanjankoski became a member of the Central Board, that the idea was revisited. In 1931, Chairwoman Fanny Luukkonen presented the plan to create Girl Ladas at the annual meeting, and her proposal was approved by the board for further testing. Lada organization introduced youth activities for girls aged 8 to 17, aimed at instilling the organization's core values and preparing them for future membership. These young members, initially known as Little Ladas, participated in lectures, discussions, and craft activities during work evenings. They also engaged in the activities of the Lada organization's divisions when possible. In 1943, the name was changed to Lada Girl to reflect the older members' duties, and today, the term Junior Lada is used to refer to both Little Ladas and Lada Girls. The official emblem of the Lada Svard organization featured the text Lada Svard on a blue swastika, adorned with heraldic roses. The design was approved in 1921 and had close connections with the Civil Guard, whose official flag bore a similar motif. The swastika symbol had historical significance as a good luck symbol and had been used in various contexts throughout history. Lada pins featuring the emblem were worn on the collar of the Lada uniform. This swastika didn't confuse with the Nazi swastika. This meaning is very different. The chosen swastika design had very close connections with the Civil Guard, whose official flag bore a very similar motif. How explained Kai Mecklin, museum director and a former pilot in the Finnish Air Force, FAF.
To us, the swastika is a symbol of freedom and independence.
For example, in the Finnish Iron Age was used as a decorative motif to adorn items, later in the Middle Age associated with churches, and finally the FAF was used until 1945. By Mr. Kai.
The Finnish Air Force adopted the swastika as its logo long before Hitler and the Nazis did.
The official Lada uniform was approved in 1922, with strict guidelines for its design and use. The uniform was to be made from gray cotton or wool, with the skirts hemmed precisely 25 centimeters from the ground. Lada pins and official course badges were the only authorized accessories. Dark-colored socks and shoes or ski boots were to be worn, and a woolen cloak served as an overcoat initially, later replaced by a lighter Lada raincoat. In the case of Little Ladas, just like the age division, the uniform was the same, just on a smaller scale. The youngest, ages 8 to 13, had a blue beret, but it was changed into the regular cap later. With this, the rules for wearing were quite strict. The only medals and insignias allowed with it were badges of honor plus of course the merit and Tnes badges of the Lada Svard. No makeup was allowed and her had to be kept inside the hate. Wedding ring sandalwatchworthy and jewelry allowed. Drinking alcohol, smoking and immoral behavior were strictly forbidden while wearing Lada clothing. Going to Thefert line without permission was forbidden during combat. During peacetime, local Lada chapters regularly held sewing gatherings, contributing to the Civil Guard's needs and providing education on various topics. We can mention a lot of printed material between the 1930 and 1944 of the Lada Svard public magazines. For example, we have the Christmas Lada. The earliest publication was the July Lada Christmas magazine from 1922. This was in Swedish and made by Lowland Vastrom, which proved to be a lucrative fundraiser. The idea of publishing a magazine for the Lada Svard organization was RST discussed in 1923, but was not realized until 1928, when Hilja Riepinen proposed it at a meeting in Vasa. The RST issue was published that year, with Hilja Riepinen serving as the editor until 1936, when she was succeeded by Fanny Luukkonen. The magazine featured general information, editorials, and contributed articles from Ladas. Even the small Ladas had their own magazine, initially called Piccolada and later renamed Lada Tito in 1943. It was RST published in 1938 with the aim of creating an engaging and easy-to-understand magazine for young readers. The magazine included various contents such as puzzles, competitions, stories, poems, and illustrations. In addition to the magazine, other publications included songbooks, handbooks, and books on crafts and hobbies. Besides, the Ladas engaged in various activities, including relief work, international cooperation, business operations, equipping ELD hospitals, and 40 cation construction sites. The organization expanded its support to charities during the 1930s depression, provided financial aid, and collected essential items for those in need. Lada had international connections with Baltic Sea countries and Norway in the 1930s and maintained ties with their Swedish counterparts. They also ventured into business activities with kiosks, cafes, and restaurants managed by local chapters. But this peacetime period will not last forever. In the years following the Finnish Civil War, Finland faced political instability due to rivalries between conservative and socialist factions. Finland signed a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union in 1932 and renewed it in 1934. After the Great Purge, the Soviet Union changed their foreign policy toward Finland and began to pursue the reconquest of the provinces that had been lost during the Revolution of 1917 and the Russian Civil War. In April 1938, NKVD agent Boris Yartsev contacted Finnish Foreign Minister Rudolf Holsti and Finnish Prime Minister Ima Cajander to propose the cede or lease the Gotland Island, Sursari, and 4 small uninhabited islets the Gulf of Finland along the seaward approaches to Leningrad and confirm the position of Finland in an eventual war with Germany. Finland refused the proposal and assured be committed to a policy of neutrality and that the country would resist any armed incursion. 1939, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was signed, but it included a secret protocol in which the countries of Eastern Europe were divided into spheres of interest. Finland fell into the Soviet sphere. When Germany invaded Poland on September 1, 1939, starting with this, the Second World War. In the beginning, the Soviet Union stayed on the sidelines until September 17 when it invaded eastern Poland, after which Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania were forced to accept the treaties that allowed the Soviets to intervene on their soil. Estonia accepted the ultimatum and signed the agreement on September 28, followed by Latvia and Lithuania in October. In a strategic move, the Allies decided not to declare war on the Soviet Union like Germany. In this situation, Finland decided to start a gradual mobilization. On October 5, 1939, the Soviets invited the Finnish to Moscow for negotiations. Juho Kusti Paasikivi was sent to represent to Finland. The minimal demands from Moscow were: 1. The border on the Karelian Isthmus must be moved back, westward, almost to the edge of Viipuri, a distance of between 30 and 40 kilometers. 2. Before yielding this sanitized zone, Finland must dismantle or destroy the existing fortifications on the Mannerheim Line. 3. Finland must agree to lease to the USSR, for a period of 30 years, 4 small islands in the Gulf of Finland, useful outposts for guarding the great naval base at Kronstadt, and the small mainland port of Hanko, where the Baltic Fleet could establish a submarine and patrol boat base to protect the seaward approaches to Leningrad. To avoid alarming the Finnish people, Stalin was prepared to limit the base's garrison to 5,000 men. In return for this kind favor, Finland received 5,500 square miles of territory in East Karelia, north of Lake Ladoga. Extremely profitable trade agreements would follow. This offer divided the Finnish government, because once you were invited the Red Army in, outright annexation by the Red Army sooner or later followed. This was an agreement similar to that offered to the Baltic countries that ended with the Soviet Union simply entering and taking control of the 3 countries in 1940. The Finnish government was aware of the possibility of full annexation if it accepted the agreement. However, the Finnish population as a whole would never accept Russian demands. Faced with this situation, Field Marshal Mannerheim tried to convince the government to seek a diplomatic solution because Finland was not in a position to fight. Stalin was not bluffing, Mannerheim told President Kallio and Foreign Minister Urho. But he was ignored, and finally Parliament and public opinion rejected the proposal. On November 26, 1939, an incident occurred near the Soviet village of Mainila, close to the Finnish border, in which a Soviet border guard post was reportedly shelled, resulting in casualties. Soviet Foreign Minister Molotov claimed that the incident was a Finnish artillery attack and demanded an apology from Finland, along with the withdrawal of Finnish forces from the border. Finland denied responsibility and rejected the demands. In response, the Soviet Union considered Finland's reply hostile and renounced the Non-Aggression Pact and severed diplomatic relations on November 28. Subsequent research by Finnish and Russian historians indicated that this incident was likely a false flag operation orchestrated by the Soviets to create a casus belli and a pretext to withdraw from the Non-Aggression Pact. But the die was cast. 2 days later, the Soviet Union invaded Finland with 450,000 men and bombarded Helsinki, marking the beginning of the Winter War. During this conflict, around 100,000 men were freed from civilian jobs, which were taken over by Latas, to serve in the military. Latas played a vital role in hospitals, air raid warning posts, and various auxiliary tasks in collaboration with the armed forces. In the war zone, they worked under the defense forces, providing essential support, such as provisioning troops, treating the wounded, maintaining equipment, and handling office and communication tasks. The Lada organization accounted for approximately 40% of the women working alongside the defense forces. Even the small Ladas played significant roles as dependable assistants. Older girls, 14 to 16 years, supported their older Lada sisters in various capacities, including medical care, catering, supplies, fundraising, office assistance, and guarding duties. Their contributions were invaluable during the war. In wartime, the training of Ladas varied based on the needs of the defense forces. Ladas working in the medical division received more training than those in other divisions, with some attending 6-month nursing assistant courses. Training activities were tailored to meet the specific requirements of their respective divisions. The Soviet advance into Finnish territories didn't go as planned. The Red Army underestimated the Finnish army and their harsh climate, resulting in significant casualties. Despite the discouraging circumstances, Finland resisted for 3 months with limited outside assistance. But as Mannerheim had predicted, Finland's ability to continue the resistance was not endless. However, the Finnish resistance remained fierce, with most battles concentrated around Taipale, Kala, and Rate Road. In February 1940, after the Soviets reorganized and adjusted their tactics, they managed to break through the Finnish defenses, primarily through massive artillery bombardments, eventually breaching the Mannerheim Line, after which they then advanced northward across the isthmus towards the Finnish city of Viipuri. Facing exhaustion and an inability to receive substantial help, Finland was compelled to seek peace. Signing the Moscow Peace Treaty was signed in March 1940, leading to Finland ceding 9% of its territory to the Soviet Union. However, this conflict is considered a failure for the Soviets due to their significant losses compared to Finland's relatively limited casualties.
The poor performance of the Red Army during the Winter War encouraged Adolf Hitler to believe in a quick defeat of the Soviet Union. After a period of provisional peace of 15 months, on June 22, 1941, Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, a total invasion of Soviet territories, opening the Eastern Front, and with it an opportunity for Finland to recover what it had lost. In the afternoon of the June 23, meanwhile German expanding in the Soviet territory, Molotov demanded the charge d'Aries, PJ Hinnanen a direct declaration by Finland stating whether it was on the side of Germany or neutral. For some reason, Hinnanen's telegram arrived in Helsinki over a day late and Molotov never received a reply. In view of this situation, early in the morning of June 25, the Soviet Baltic Fleet and Air Force commenced hostilities with Finland, launching an air offensive targeting 19 air elds in Finland territory. There was considerable destruction in many towns. The Finnish parliament used the attacks as justifying for the approval of a defensive war. Declaring the war the same day started the continuation war or jatkosota in Finnish. Finland's decision to declare war was driven by several factors. One primary motivation was the desire to recover the lost territories during the Winter War. The tensions between Finland and the Soviet Union persisted after the war, with military movements and actions on both sides. And also we can mention the envisioned Greater Finland by Finnish President Risto Ryti, as well as the annexation of Eastern Karelia aimed by Carl Gustav Emil Mannerheim. As the war was developing, the Lada organization played a significant role in auxiliary positions, in coordination with the Finnish armed forces. Initially, members under the age of 20 were not allowed to be sent to the war zone without authorization, but this restriction was later lifted due to personnel shortages, where even some Lada girls as young as 16 were sent on duties. For this reason, in order to ease the shortage of men, Ladas formed the 14th Searchlight Battery Division for the 1st Anti-Aircraft Regiment in summer of 1944. This was the only military unit comprising women that was active and ready for combat during the active years of the Lada organization. By September 1941, Finland had taken back the land they had lost in the Winter War and went further than the border from 1939. They were getting close to Leningrad and had captured a big part of Eastern Karelia. However, some people in Finland were not sure about going past the 1939 border. They worried that they might be taking on more than they could control. The main goal of the Finnish army was only defensive, but participation in besieging the city, cutting northern supply routes. Between 1942 and 1943, military actions were relatively limited, with some Soviet offensives stalemated. The situation remained static as Germany's position deteriorated on the Eastern Front. Got worse in June 1944, when the Red Army launched the Vyborg, Petrozavodsk offensive on the Karelian Isthmus, putting Finland army against the ropes, losing their territory until the Vikate defense line. In this place began the decisive Battle of Tali, Ihantala, where the Finland army defeats the Red Army and stabilizes their front. This and other victories prevent the Soviets from making significant advances and demonstrate how difficult and expensive it would be to carry out an annexation of the entire territory, even with a total advantage in material and soldiers. Finland is a tough cookie. However, the Soviets' victories against Germany in the Bagration operation forced to Finland sought to leave the war and began the negotiations for an armistice, with Mannerheim as new president. Finally, the Khan ICT ended in September 1944 with the signing of the Moscow Armistice. Finland restored its 1940 borders, ceded Petsamo to the Soviets, paid war reparations, and acknowledged its status as a former German ally, and any pro-Hitler organization were occasionally disarmed. This include the Lada Svard Association, per Article 21 of the Moscow Treaty.
Article 21. Finland undertakes immediately to dissolve all pro-Hitler organizations of a fascist type situated in Finnish territory, whether political, military, or paramilitary, as well as other organizations conducting propaganda hostile to the United Nations, in particular to the Soviet Union, and will not in future permit the existence of organizations of that nature.
With the request of the Allied Control Commission, the Civil Guard was disbanded in November 1944. Due to its association with the Civil Guard, the Lada Svard organization was also slated for disbandment. To address this, the Lada Svard Central Board initiated rule changes to detach from the Civil Guard and began preparations to establish a foundation to continue relief and aid work. The Lada organization was officially disbanded on November 23, 1944. Throughout the war, around 291 Ladas lost their lives, with most succumbing to diseases contracted on duty. A smaller number were killed on the front, in air raids or accidents. These fallen Ladas were laid to rest in war heroes' graves in their home parishes. The survivors, especially young Ladas under 17, often experienced trauma and long-lasting EX. In the autumn of 1944, a new organization named Suomen Naisen Hiltoseisho was established and inherited many assets from the former organization. This organization, now known as Lada Svard Foundation, continues to uphold its original values, concentrating on social aid and relief work for the wounded and those in need.
After delving into the journey of the Lada Svard from their inception to their dissolution, we can truly grasp the profound significance of their role in the history of Finland. They stood as a cornerstone of Finnish culture and history, becoming a symbol of resistance. Their dedication and sacrifice, their willingness to fight alongside their husbands, brothers, sons, and friends to defend their homeland, serve as an inspiring example of equality and unity in the struggle. Finland's history would have taken an incomprehensible turn if the Ladas had not existed. During the civil wars, the Winter War, and the Continuation War, their involvement and the release of soldiers to the front lines were crucial in withstanding the fierce attacks of those who sought to destroy them. What matters is that they fought and perished as a unified entity, and a significant part of what Finland is today owes itself to these courageous women. Thus, we must remember them with deep respect and the honor they truly deserve.